Have you ever had your kid come home from the other house and the second they walk in, you feel it? They're not just tired, they're different. Their eyes don't meet yours the same way. Their body is a little guarded, or they hit you with a sentence that doesn't even sound like them, like it was handed to them. Sometimes it's a sharp label that makes your stomach drop. Sometimes it's a message that they've been asked to deliver. And in that moment, your whole nervous system lights up because you're trying so hard to do the right thing. You're trying to be the mature one, the calm one, the steady one. And yet somehow you still end up feeling like you're failing. Take a breath, because I want you to know something I wish someone had told me earlier. Generic parenting advice doesn't work in this kind of dynamic. Not because you're doing it wrong, but because the rules are different when your child is navigating emotional pressure, loyalty binds, or chronic dysregulation in the other environment. By the way, if parts of this are already landing and you're realizing, okay, normal advice hasn't helped me here, I want to invite you to book a strategy session with me, not a generic pep talk, a real conversation that turns all of this into a plan. Because if you've been craving a repeatable response plan, language that helps you stay neutral but still protective, and a way to become the stable parent even when the other parent stays high conflict, that's exactly what my step-by-step program teaches. And the strategy session is how we figure out whether that program is the right support for you. It's a chance to map what your child is showing you, identify the patterns that you're navigating, and get clear about what kind of support will actually protect your relationship with your child long-term, so you're not guessing or piecing it together alone. Okay, by the end of our time together today, you're going to feel more clear, more validated, and this matters most, more emotionally steady. You'll understand why your well-meaning instincts might be backfiring, what actually protects a child's emotional development over time, and how to become the safe anchor your child can return to, even when you can't control what happens elsewhere. And I'll share a piece of my own story as a bonus parent, because I've watched this up close. I've watched what chronic emotional pressure can do to a child's nervous system in real time. And I've also watched what happens when, instead of spending our energy trying to change what we couldn't control or trying to get another adult to understand our perspective, we put our energy where it could actually make a difference. We focused on what we could control, the emotional climate in our home: safety, predictability, connection. Let's pause on that. Because when my bonus child got older and started using more language, we noticed something that honestly stopped me in my tracks. They would sometimes bring worries that felt too heavy for their age, almost like adult level concerns in a little kid's body. Now, I'm not going to lie, it can spike your anxiety fast because your instinct is to correct it immediately, to clarify, to make sure that they don't have to carry grown-up emotional weight. But as a child development expert, I knew that we had to respond to the feelings underneath instead of being tangled up in the words on top. Because the goal wasn't to debate a narrative. The goal was to keep them connected to themselves and safe with us. And as we saw that approach actually working, we got better at tending to our own anxiety and fear for their well-being. So we could consistently show up with the calm, grounded presence that they needed. Here's the first lesson that I learned the hard way. I truly believed clarity would fix it. I believe that if we could just be fair, logical, consistent, eventually the other adult would calm down, that they would hear us, that they would care about what was best for the child. And I want you to hear this because it matters. That belief doesn't make you naive. It makes you healthy. It means you're wired for repair. You assume good faith. You assume that if you communicate clearly enough, people will meet you in the middle. But in an emotionally unsafe dynamic, clarity isn't the currency. Control is, emotion is, power is. So what happens is you keep bringing logic to something that isn't being driven by logic. You bring, let's talk through this, to someone who isn't actually trying to understand you, someone who benefits from your confusion, your defensiveness, and you being off balance. And then the safe parent starts doing something exhausting without even realizing it. You start trying to parent the entire system. You start managing reactions, anticipating the next escalation, trying to prevent the next blow up, trying to word things perfectly so they can't be twisted, trying to stay calm while also being alert. And meanwhile, your child is watching, not like they're taking notes, but in their nervous system. Because kids don't just listen to what you say, they feel the emotional weather. They feel the tension in your shoulders. They feel the bracing energy in the room. And this was one of the biggest shifts for me as a bonus parent, realizing that the problem wasn't that the child needed more explanation. The problem was that their body was learning strategies to stay emotionally safe. Maybe that looked like hypervigilance. Maybe it looked like shutting down. Maybe it looked like people pleasing or suddenly performing the right thing for the right adult. And if there is narcissism or emotional immaturity in the picture, a child can start learning very subtly that love is conditional on loyalty. So they adapt because their system is trying to stay connected to both parents in the only way it knows how. Let me say that again, because this is where so many parents start spiraling. Your child's confusing behavior is often adaptation, not betrayal. So the first lesson is this: stop expecting the co-parenting relationship to become emotionally safe. That doesn't mean you stop holding boundaries. It means that you stop organizing your life around the hope that if you just explain it better, it will get better. Your job isn't to make the other adult reasonable. Your job is to become the calm, consistent environment that your child's nervous system can trust. And that shift isn't just practical, it's regulating. Because the moment you stop chasing resolution with someone who's committed to the pattern, you get your energy back. And your child can feel that. I remember a moment when we realized, oh, logic isn't going to fix this. Not because we didn't try, not because we weren't thoughtful, but because we could see that the child was under emotional pressure. And that pressure was shaping what they said, what they shared, and how they showed up. And that's when it clicked. This wasn't something we could communicate our way out of. And it wasn't something any expert could simply fix from the outside. Because what was happening wasn't a few misunderstandings. It was a pattern. So we stopped putting our energy into trying to fix what we couldn't control. And we doubled down on what we could control, creating safety, stability, and emotional steadiness in our home. And listen, if you're watching this and thinking, okay, I get it, but I still don't know what to do in the moments when my child repeats accusations or delivers messages, that's exactly why I offer strategy sessions. Not as a one-off fix, but as a space to get clear on what's happening and what will actually help. So if you're listening to this and thinking, I'm tired of improvising and second-guessing myself, book a strategy session. We'll look at what's really happening and we'll decide the next best step together. The next thing that I learned was the difference between being a good parent and an emotionally safe parent. This one might sting a little, but I want to say it with so much compassion. A lot of good parenting instincts backfire in toxic dynamics because good parenting, the way most of us were taught it, sounds like this. Let me explain. Let me correct that. Let me reassure you. Let me fix this. Let me prove the truth. Let me make sure that you understand. And again, those are beautiful instincts. They come from love. But in a high conflict dynamic, those instincts can accidentally put pressure on your child. Here's how that can look. Your child comes in and says, the other parent says you're trying to take me away, and your heart drops. And you go into the good parent mode and say, that's not true. I would never do that. Let me explain what really happened. But what your child hears underneath the words is, I need you to agree with me for me to feel okay. And your child is already in a loyalty bind. They're already carrying someone else's emotions. So now they also feel like they have to manage your emotions too. Let's pause on that. Because most safe parents are not trying to burden their child. They're trying to clear the air. But when a child is being emotionally manipulated, they don't experience clarification as relief. They experience it as danger. Because if they repeat your clarification in the other home, it may cost them emotionally. So what does an emotionally safe parent do instead? An emotionally safe parent prioritizes the child's internal experience over the external facts, not because facts don't matter, but because your child's nervous system matters more. Emotional safety sounds like this. Wow, that's a big thing to hear. You don't have to solve that right now. I'm here with you. It makes sense that you're confused. You're allowed to love both your parents. You're safe to be here. Do you feel the difference? One is about convincing. The other is about containing. And containment is medicine for a child who's living in emotional chaos. Now, does that mean you never correct misinformation? No. But you correct it gently, with neutrality, without recruiting your child to take a side. Sometimes the safest thing you can say is, I'm not going to talk badly about the other parent. And also, if you ever feel scared, pressured, or confused, you can always tell me. My job is to keep you safe, not to argue about grown-up stuff. What would that feel like for you? To stop trying to win the narrative and start becoming the place where your child can exhale. I know it sounds small, but it's a game changer because kids don't heal through one big conversation. They heal through repetition. They heal when your response is predictable. They heal when they don't have to manage your emotions. They heal when your house feels like emotional gravity. Steady, grounded, calm. I see this with a lot of parents I work with. One parent I supported told me, every time my child repeats an accusation, I immediately try to remind them, you were there, you know what you experienced. Because they were trying so hard to protect the truth and protect their child's sense of reality. What she noticed was that her child would pull away. They'd get fidgety, shut down, say, can we talk about something else? From her perspective, she was being a good parent, clarifying, reassuring, trying to help her child stay anchored in what they actually knew. But from the child's nervous system perspective, it was too much pressure. So we tried something different. The next time her child brought home something like this, she took a breath and said, wow, that's a really confusing thing to hear. And then she stopped. She let that validation land. That was it. And she told me later, it was the first time that her child didn't shut down after one of those conversations. They actually stayed close to her on the couch. Nothing magical was said. It was the absence of pressure and the presence of emotional safety that changed the moment. Now, here's lesson number 3. I want to talk about something that really breaks a lot of parents' hearts, but also brings relief when they finally understand it. Children adapt to emotional manipulation and emotional pressure, even when no one names it out loud. So you can be doing everything right and still feel your child shift. You might notice that they stop telling you things. They get vague, they get emotionally flattened, they get irritable over small things, or they come home and it's like they're fine for about 10 minutes, and then they suddenly start picking a fight or melting down. And you're standing there thinking, what happened? We were doing so well. What's happening is that their nervous system is switching strategies. In one environment, they might need to be compliant to stay emotionally safe. And with you, because you're the safer container, they finally have enough safety to release. So they begin to melt down, or they test you, or they get cold. Not because they don't love you, because their body is telling them, this is the place where I can finally let go. Let me say that again, because if you're the safe parent, you need this in your bones. Sometimes your child looks like they're doing worse with you because they're safer. Then there's another adaptation that's even more confusing, guardedness. This is where the child feels like they can't fully relax into connection with you because closeness to you might come with emotional consequences somewhere else. So they stay slightly removed. They don't make eye contact as long. They don't cuddle as long. They change the subject when you ask about their weekend. And if you take that personally, it will wreck you because it feels like rejection. But it's not rejection. It's strategy. It's survival. A child navigating this kind of pressure becomes an expert at reading the room. They learn what version of themselves is safest in each environment. So in that other environment, they may learn to be the ally, the one who agrees, the one who takes on the story, who stays loyal. Or they become the easy kid, no big feelings, no needs, no questions. And then they come back to you and either everything spills out or they get a little distant. Either way, it's their nervous system trying to stay safe. And inside, they can feel split, confused, anxious, sometimes numb. And this is where I want to give you a framework that helps you stop panicking and start getting strategic. Because strategy is what creates steadiness. I have a simple framework I use with a lot of parents, a way of making sense of what you're seeing. I call it the 3 child outcomes, because in these dynamics, when you zoom out, you tend to see 3 common directions a child can drift over time. One path is the internalized harm path. That's where the child becomes shut down, anxious, depressed, or disconnected from their inner voice. They learn my feelings are wrong, my reality can't be trusted. Another path is the alienation or allyship path. That's where the child aligns with the high conflict parent, rejects the safe parent, and may even mimic some of the same traits: controlling, contemptuous, emotionally cold, because their alignment is rewarded. And then there's the resilient child path. This is the path where the other parent may still manipulate, but your child develops the internal compass. They learn to name what they feel. They learn to reality check without having to attack anyone. They stay connected to themselves and connected to you. And I need you to hear this. The resilient path is possible, even if you can't change the other parent. The resilient path is built through your consistency, your regulation, your presence, not through exposing, not through confronting, not through proving the truth, through safety repeated over time. Now let's talk about what actually helps, because I don't want this to just be validating. I want it to be usable. There are 3 principles I want you to hold onto like a spine: consistency over intensity, regulation over urgency, anchoring energy over managing the other parent. Let's slow that down. Consistency over intensity means you don't have to have the perfect conversation. You don't have to respond like a therapist every time. You don't need the emotional mic drop that finally makes your child understand. What you need is to be predictably safe, predictably calm, predictably open. That means when your child brings a hot message, you don't become a courtroom. You become a landing pad. And some days, the best you can do is simply not escalate. That counts. Regulation over urgency means that your nervous system is the strategy. If your body goes into panic, your words will follow. So part of your job is learning to notice your own activation, your tight chest, your racing mind, your need to fix, and to practice coming back to center. Sometimes that looks like taking one breath before you answer. Sometimes it looks like saying, "Thank you for telling me. I'm going to think about that for a minute." Sometimes it looks like you taking a break after bedtime to let yourself cry, journal, shake it out, meditate, go for a walk, whatever regulation looks like for you. So your child doesn't become the place where you process adult fear. And anchor energy over managing the other parent. This is the hardest and the most freeing, because many safe parents live like this: if I can just anticipate what the other parent will do, I can protect my child. But the truth is, you cannot outmaneuver chaos. What you can do is build a home base that your child's body trusts. So what does anchor energy look like in real life? It looks like having a few go-to phrases that you repeat when things get weird. Not because you're robotic, because you're consistent. Here are a few examples in the spirit of neutrality and safety. Feel them in your own voice. I'm really glad you told me. You're not in trouble with me. You don't have to carry grown-up problems. It's okay to love both parents. I won't ask you to pick sides. If something feels confusing or yucky in your body, you can always talk to me. And if your child comes in accusing you or repeating something cruel, the anchor response is not, "How dare they say that about me?" The anchor response is, "Something about this feels really loaded, and I'm not mad at you. I'm right here." Let's pause, because this is where a lot of parents feel grief. They realize, I can't protect my child from exposure. I can only protect their internal world. And yes, there is grief in that, but there is also power, because the child who has one emotionally safe parent has a chance to develop resilience that can change their entire life. Now, I also want to gently mention something that has helped me hold the pain without turning it into rage. And you can take this part or leave it, because spirituality is personal. But I often come back to this question: why does this child have to have such a difficult parent? And the only way I've been able to stay soft and not become consumed by hatred or obsession is practicing radical acceptance with a spiritual mindset. I believe, whether you call it God, the universe, fate, or something else, that each of us arrive into this world with a lesson. And sometimes a child's lesson is to learn discernment, learn self-trust, learn how to recognize manipulation without losing their heart. And that doesn't mean we excuse harm. It doesn't mean we spiritual bypass abuse. It means that we stop asking, how do I control the uncontrollable? And we start asking, how do I equip this child for life? Because if they don't learn these skills now, They may repeat these patterns later with friends, partners, in the workplace. Life will keep handing them the same lesson until they have the tools to pass it. So in our home, the goal is not to expose the toxic parent. The goal is to build the child's internal compass, teach them emotional literacy, teach them body awareness, teach them critical thinking, teach them that love doesn't require self-abandonment. And one of the most surprising things that I've witnessed personally is what happens when the pressure is removed. When the child realizes that they don't have to perform in our home, they don't have to be the messenger, they don't have to defend anyone, they don't have to manage adults' emotions or keep the peace. Their nervous system starts to soften, and it doesn't happen all at once. It happens in tiny moments, more eye contact, more honesty, more, can I tell you something, more repair after ruptures. That is what you're building, not a perfect child, a connected child, a resilient child. There are moments where my bonus child said something sharp to me, words that felt too big for a little kid. And instead of treating it like a character issue, I treated it like a nervous system moment. I stayed calm and told them, I love you. You're not in trouble with me. My heart is strong enough to handle big feelings and big words. And what I saw next was the whole point. They didn't spiral. They didn't have to defend it. They just settled. And what it felt like over time was that they were testing, will this connection break if I say something harsh? And when it didn't, when they realized that I could stay steady and loving, they stayed close. They talked more freely. They shared more. There was more disclosure, more little moments of honesty, because they learned I can mess up and you'll still love me. I don't have to earn it by being perfect. And that was the reminder for me. The win isn't controlling what's said elsewhere. The win is being the place where they can return to, where connection holds and trust keeps growing. If you take nothing else from this, take this. You are not failing. You are parenting in a dynamic that requires a different playbook. And the win is not controlling the narrative. The win is becoming the emotionally safe parent your child can return to again and again until their own inner voice gets strong enough to guide them. If you're ready to stop improvising, stop spiraling after hard exchanges, and start responding with calm, consistent strategy, book a strategy session. We'll look at what's happening in your exact situation, identify the patterns, and get clear on the next best step so you can stop guessing, feel steadier in yourself, and know whether my program is the right support to help you build a repeatable response plan over time. You don't have to do this alone, and you don't have to stay in panic to be protective. You can be the anchor, and over time, that changes everything.